Hey everybody, it's Eric from epautos.com, your libertarian car guy. Just a couple of final thoughts about this 2025 Hyundai Ioniq 5 that I've been test driving this week. I panned on the camera, panned on the dash to let you see that I've still got 145 miles of indicated range remaining, even though I didn't plug the thing in overnight last night, and it's fairly cold out. So, ordinarily when I drive an EV, they tend to lose a significant amount of power overnight. I've been impressed that this Hyundai has not, and I've also been impressed that the range you can actually drive jibes with the indicated range, which is unusual. If you follow my reviews of these EVs, you'll know that in the past, the majority, and hell, all of them that I've been driving, tend to have a very optimistic estimate of how far you can actually drive the thing. I've noticed that it tends to be 10 to 20% in the negative for the most part on these things. Not this one. Now that's all to the good. Now what's not so good, and this is just a general thing, is that these EVs are still expensive, and so is electricity. This particular EV has a base price around $42,000, and that's the full freight now because the federal EV tax rebate is gone, so people can't avail themselves of that. So in the first place, it's a pretty expensive vehicle. But the other thing, and I've got a big article about this over on the site that you might be interested in, is that the cost savings that they promised people would have if they bought an EV in terms of electricity being less expensive than gas, well, that's pretty much evaporating. And it's totally gone if you're going to go get electricity at a commercial fast charger, which you're paying extra for. You're paying extra for the convenience and the high voltage infrastructure and all this other stuff. Hang on, let me get around the clover here. And at home, your utility bills have been going up considerably. Everybody knows this. And that's even if you don't have an EV. Everywhere you go around the country, pretty much, electricity is costing significantly more. So there's no longer much of an advantage, financially at any rate, in fueling an electricity, fueling an EV with electricity, as opposed to driving a car with an engine. The New York Times. So here's a source for you. The New York Times, which would normally be considered kind of left and normally favorable toward EVs, had an article the other day, and I linked to this in my article, that points out that driving an EV and feeding it electricity ends up costing you about the same as it costs to fuel up a vehicle that averages 25 miles per gallon, which is pretty much an SUV at this point. So that's hugely problematic for EV sales. I think it's even more problematic than the ending of that federal $7,500 tax rebate, because what's the point? What's the upside? What are you getting by driving an EV other than, okay, I kind of like the EV. I like that it's quiet. I like that it's got a lot of immediate right now torque from the electric motors, all of which is fine, but at the end of the day, you still have to deal with the hassles that come with owning an EV, such as waiting for it to charge, even if you charge the thing at home. I know you're home, but you're still waiting, aren't you? You can't do something else if you're low on charge and your EV is plugged in at home. You have to figure something else, in terms of transportation. And if you go to the fast chargers, well, you got to go to the fast charger, and it's not so fast. Even though this Hyundai is an example, charges faster than a lot of the other EVs on the market, you're still looking at 20 minutes, 30 minutes to get anywhere near more than half full, partial charge, let alone a full charge, because the things are designed to go back, to throttle back, if you will, to slower charging for the sake of preserving battery health. Typically, the most you can get is an 80% charge, and so that leaves 20% that's remaining. And if you want the full charge, you'll probably be sitting there for 45 minutes to an hour, which is a long time to wait when you think you can put a full tank of gas in just about any vehicle for in about 3 minutes, full tank, and be back on the road. So, others have commented on it. I'm just going to add my 50 here. I think the EV market is about to crater. There was a last-minute blip in sales, and that was because people were aware of the fact that the $7,500 credit was going away, so they wanted to get while the getting was good, and that's all gone now. And this is really, I think, going to be devastating for manufacturers that have bought into the EV thing, have invested a lot of money in R&D and developing these EVs that are not going to sell and that haven't been selling. There's so many examples of this. The money hemorrhaging is a disaster, and it's not just a disaster for the manufacturers, i.e. Ford, GM, and all the rest of them. It's also really bad news for the dealerships, because the dealerships have had to deal with these EVs, have had to accept a certain allotment as part of their allotment, and now they're stuck with trying to sell them, and nobody wants them. Now, understandably, why would you spend, again, to circle back to this Hyundai Ioniq, which is an unobjectionable EV. In fact, I like it, as far as it being an EV. Nonetheless, $42,000 for a small crossover when you could go out and pick up something like something similar like a Subaru Crosstrek for $15,000 less, at least. And you've got a vehicle there that's not going to cost you appreciably more to drive because the fueling costs are roughly par. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, more over at epautos.com, the web's best libertarian gearhead site. Thanks as always for listening, and we'll have more for you again soon.